So, good afternoon. Now, before the break, we were talking about commitment as an emotional competence. So, we have seen the meaning of commitment and we will talk about some of the behavioral characteristics of commitment now. So, write down further. The people who are high in this competence, number one, they readily make sacrifices for the larger mission of the organization. They readily make sacrifices for the larger mission, for the sake of the larger mission of the organization. Now, this is the first important sign of high commitment here. The idea of commitment is that here, that whenever we are a member of an organization, whenever we are a part of the organization, then sometimes or the other, organization demands some sacrifice from us. So that is a part of group life. Whenever we are in any relationship, then sometimes we have to make a sacrifice. How willingly and how happily you make that sacrifice, commitment determines that, or that defines commitment. This sacrifice that I am talking about is can be as simple as, suppose for example, think of it. Suppose for example, there are two people, say A and B. Both of them are working in an organization. Suppose the work time of these people are 10 o'clock in the in the morning to 6 o'clock in the evening. Now, suppose at 4 o'clock, suppose this person is high in commitment and this person is low in commitment. Now, in the afternoon, the boss comes to them and boss tells them that there is some urgent work today that I have to complete it today itself. So, both of you will have to stay 2 hours extra in the office till 8 o'clock. Now, so this is a demand now. In this case, what is happening? The boss is demanding, the organization demanding, give me 2 hours of your personal time to us. Because 6 to 8 in the evening is your personal time, but there is a demand, there is a claim over that. Now, this person who is high in commitment, he will think that it's my work, it's my office. If I will not do, then who else will? Thinking that he will happily make that sacrifice. He will come forward and will tell, sir, yes, sir, we can do it, it's our job. So I will do that. He will happily agree for that. This person, on the other hand, he will also make a sacrifice. You cannot say no to your boss. There is a demand, there is a compulsion. You have to say yes. So he will also make that sacrifice, but all the time he will keep on cribbing about it. That boss is so bad, office is so bad, so many plans I had to go to the market, shopping, film, etc. Everything is destroyed. So he keeps on cribbing in his mind, and because of that, well, you'll see that this person will be able to take maximum out of his sacrifice, and he, on the other hand, will be able to take less out. Because as we had seen in our earlier class, that positive emotions often improve our performance and negative emotions often reduce our performance. So that positive emotion of this person will make him to, well, perform better, and negative emotion that he will keep on feeling in himself, well, it will create a trouble for him. Remember, this is how commitment increases our performance, efficiency. Efficiency was, again, we have seen in the previous class, efficiency is equal to, again, output upon input. So input is same for both of them, 2 hours, but output is different for them. That makes this person more efficient in work, he less efficient. Commitment increases our efficiency of work output in a way. So this sacrifice can be as simple as this, or it can be as important as, suppose for example, you are an officer in civil service and you are transferred to a position which is known in bureaucracy as the so-called punishment posting. Now, many punishment postings are there. Now, in this case, this person will think, okay, that's also a bureaucratic job. Somebody has to do that job. Why not I? Thinking that he will go there, take that appointment and try to do the best that he can do under the circumstances. This second person, on the other hand, he will try to put every effort to change the appointment and do something else. In this case, the case that often comes to my mind was the case of Kiran Bedi. Kiran Bedi, when she was posted long ago, when she was posted as the director of Tihar jail, it did appear to be a punishment posting, because for an IPS officer to be posted as a director of a jail is actually a punishment posting, because when you are in a district, for example, then you are virtually master of the whole district. But as a director of the jail, you are just like a big jailer. So it is actually, in terms of power, influence, or something like status, etc., it is actually a punishment posting. But she accepted that offer. She went there and she worked so well as the director of the Bihar jail that she got Roman Magsaysay Award for her prison reform, jail reform. Now that is what commitment might mean, that well, she went there and then after she worked so well for prison reform, jail reform, that she got international recognition for that. The idea of commitment is that sacrifice is an important part of life that you have to realize. Everybody has to sometimes willingly or unwillingly has to make a sacrifice. If you make a sacrifice, then well, make it willingly. That will improve your performance. That will be so. In every possible situation, we can work out. We can take maximum out of the situation that we may possibly be in. So this is what commitment means: your willingness to make sacrifice for the sake of the larger mission of the organization. So that is how we define commitment, one important thing. In fact, anybody who talks about commitment, they always talk about first important sign of commitment is your ability to make sacrifice. Think of Gandhi. Gandhi often used to say that your commitment towards your nation, that is what we call the patriotism. What is a patriotism? Patriotism is your commitment towards your nation. They overlap between your personal interest and the national interest. So Gandhi often used to say that your commitment towards your nation will be measured in terms of the amount of sacrifice that you are willing to make for the sake of your nation. He demanded Indians to make many sacrifices, that give up foreign clothes, give up foreign jobs, give up foreign education, foreign court, start spinning charkha. All of these were sacrifices, and he demanded that sacrifice from the Indians, and Indians did make that sacrifice. That ultimately created a sense of, you can say, the sense of, you can say, patriotism in them, and national belongingness in them. So making sacrifice is an important part of the commitment of a person in an organization. Any such example you can think of like this. Second one, I don't further. They find a sense of meaning and purpose they find a sense of meaning and purpose in the larger mission of the organization. They find a sense of meaning and purpose in the larger mission of the organization. Now, that is another important thing. As we have seen in our existentialism class earlier, that having a sense of meaning and purpose is a very important part of a good life. A good life must be a meaningful life. Good life must be a purposeful life. So, why should I live this life? There must be an answer to that question. Otherwise, it's better to die rather than to live. If we remember, in that class we had talked about, there was a beautiful quotation of Albert Camus. He had said that the only problem of philosophical significance before man is the problem of suicide. That why should I not commit suicide? There has to be something for which you live. So that is what we have talked about in the existential. Should I kill myself or have a cup of coffee? So if you have something to look for, that okay, I want to have a cup of coffee, then you can live. Otherwise, if there is nothing, then it's better to die. So we have seen that a good life must be a meaningful life, when there should be something for which we can live our life. There should be something that can give us a sense of meaning and purpose or justification to our life. One sign of commitment is that people who are high in commitment, they often find that sense of meaning and purpose in the larger mission of that organization. I have to live this life because I have to fulfill a larger mission that we all are willing to, all are trying to achieve. So that is something that gives them a sense of meaning and purpose. You know, there is a beautiful quotation of some philosopher. He had said that we work not in order to earn money, we work in order to justify our life. Now, that is a beautiful way to say the same thing. The idea is that if you work, why do you work? If you work only in order to earn the money, for example, salary, then that is a bad life. That is more like animals' life. Animals also can say work and they earn something equivalent to the money that makes them live their life the best that they possibly can. So, if you work only in order to earn the money, then that is perhaps not a good life. Your work must be such that it can give you justification of why should you live your life. So, we work not in order to only earn money or salary, we work in order to justify our life. Our work, our organization must give us a justification for our life. That is what is the second important sign of commitment. They find a sense of meaning and purpose, a justification, an explanation, an identity, well, a definition from the organizations that they belong to in the larger mission of the organization. Now, before we talk about third point, let us see. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon. What do you mean by larger mission of the organization? So, goal of the organization. Larger mission basically means I told you every organization has a certain goal that it wants to achieve. So, what is that goal that organization wants to achieve? That ultimately becomes the mission for which everybody in the organization works for. So, larger goal, larger you can say purpose for which the organization is working, and that goal becomes our justification also when we are high in commitment. So, that is the second important thing that commitment is defined by. Third one, write down further. They use the core values of their organization. They use the core values of their organization They use the core values of their organization in order to clarify their choices, and to make important decisions of their life. To clarify their choices and to make important decisions of their life, comma, sometimes even personal decisions. Sometimes even personal decisions. Sometimes even personal decisions. So, this is another important sign of high commitment. Let us talk about that a little. Before we talk about this point, let us talk about, first of all, we have been talking about that a number of times. What is the meaning of the term value? Now, values are those criteria, as we have been saying so often, values are those criteria which help us to clarify our choices in the life. Suppose, for example, at one point of time you have two choices in front of you, say A and B, and well, you have to make a decision in favor of one. Now, suppose you are confused, you are not able to make up your mind what is right and what is wrong. Both of them appear to be right in some way, both of them appear to be wrong in some way. We are in dilemma, confusion, doubt. Now, in such a situation of moral dilemma, doubt and confusion, our values often help us. How to make a decision, what decision I should make. Suppose, for example, this choice is consistent with your value, then we often consider that as right. And suppose this choice is inconsistent with your value, then we consider that as wrong. So, values help us to clarify our choices in life, that, well, what choice is right, what choice is wrong, what should I do and what should I not do. So, that is what values do. Now, coming back to the commitment part here, that since the people who are high in commitment, they have, we can see, align their own personal values with the organizational values. So, they often use their organizational values in order to clarify such choices that sometimes they face in a dilemma and to make important decisions of their life. Let us take a small, very crude example. Suppose, for example, you are an officer, you are a tax officer, say you are a civil servant, a tax officer. Suppose, for example, you have gone for a vacation somewhere. You are staying in a hotel, a resort, there you meet a person, a stranger. And suppose you make a very good rapport with that person, friendship with that person, you enjoyed a lot together. You go to traveling together, shopping together, market together, film together, card game together, dinner together, whatever you can say, drink together if you do that. So you enjoy a lot with that person. After 15 days, we can say the enjoyment is too much. After 15 days, suppose your holiday is over and you are coming back to your home. Now this person tells you that yes, we enjoyed so much here together, so let's make this relationship into a permanent friendship. He offers you to make a friendship. Now suppose for example, you come to know that this person is a rich businessman and he has a business interest in a city where you are or you may be posted as a tax officer sometimes. Now if you accept that friendship, then it will create a conflict of interest for you. Conflict of interest we will talk about a few days later. That is a very important part of civil servant's life that they must learn how to handle. So it will create a possible conflict of interest for you. Now in this case, well, if you are a committed civil servant, then you will use your value as an organization, because one of the important value of civil service, which we will discuss a few days later, that it says that a civil servant must always avoid any conflict of interest. So that is one important, avoiding conflict of interest. So that is one of the central value of civil service. We will talk about that a few days later. But here we can understand whatever you know about this thing. Now, if you accept that offer of this person, then it may possibly create a conflict of interest. Your value says that no, it is wrong thing. So if you are a high committed worker, officer, then you will see that okay, this offer of a friendship is against my value, that well, I should avoid a conflict of interest. So if you are a committed civil servant, then you may tell that person that I am very thankful to you, Mr. XYZ, that we enjoyed so much together, but I am very sorry that I will not be able to accept your offer of friendship because my job does not allow me to mix with the rich people. So politely refuse that person. Now that person's offer of a permanent friendship. Now here, whom are you going to make friendship with? That's a very personal choice. But even while making such personal choice, what is right and wrong? Well, people with high commitment, they often take their values as organization values as a guide. Like for example, whom to make friendship with, which area to live in, which school to send your child to, whom to marry. These are all personal life decisions, but these personal life decisions have some important bearing on our, you can see, the professional life. So one sign of commitment is that they often use their organizational values to clarify their choices, what is right and what is wrong, and they take important decisions of their life, sometimes even personal decisions. So that is one important. So while taking decision, which value you consider more important? Organization value, commitment is very high. Some other value, commitment towards your organization would be low. So that is the third important point about a commitment. Let me see if there is a question, I think. Pintu, if you can suggest some quotes in order to make our answer more better, I think it will help us. Pintu, I keep on giving you quotes in the class itself. During almost most of the topic, I do use some quotes in the class. Try to write it down. That is the only thing that I can suggest. There is no, let's say, it will not be possible for us to have a class on the quotes separately, and that will be not important also, not relevant also, not useful also, because quotes are useful only in a context. So each context I do use quotes. For example, in the first point I did talk about that. Second point, that we work not in order to earn money, we work in order to justify our life. So I did use a quote there. So I often use quotes in these points wherever I think it is appropriate. So that is important, because only then quote will be useful. Otherwise, out of context, quote may not help you that much. Try to learn the quote within a context. And in each context, I try to give you, in the previous topic also, I gave you a quote of Galileo. Measure what can be measured. Make it measurable if it cannot be measured. Or something that gets measured, it gets improved. So I often give quotes in the classroom also with reference to the topics. The moment some quote comes to my mind, so I often use that. Try to write it down, and then after you can find similar quotes also later on. But context is more important. Quotes are relevant, important only in a context that I use them. Otherwise, quotes will not be that beneficial for you. So just giving you a list of quote will not help. That list of quote you can find in internet also. Just you can say the Google the word quote, you can have a million quotes there. Indeed, that is not going to help much. Context is more important, and that I often use that in my class. Fourth one, write down further. They actively seek out they actively seek out for the opportunities to fulfill the larger mission of the organization. They actively seek out for the opportunities to fulfill the larger mission of the organization. So this is another important thing. The first point we talk about, you make sacrifice when it is demanded. Last point is an extension of that. That in this case, you don't wait for the sacrifice to be demanded. You actively seek out what more I can do for the sake of my organization which I belong to. It is something like this. Well, let's take that example that we talked about earlier in the point 1. Suppose, for example, let's take a variation of that example. Suppose, for example, so in one case here, one variation of that case, suppose both of these two people are working in the same organization. One day the boss comes to them and boss tells them that today is there is an important work is there, some urgent work is there that must be completed today, and for that work I need one of you to stay for 2 hours extra. Now in the first case there was a demand that both of you will have to. Now there is no demand, there is a choice that I want one of you to stay, tell me who will. Now, if this person who is high in, can say, commitment, he will come forward actively and will say, okay sir, it's my job, I will do that. So he will come forward and he will take that as an opportunity and he will be happy that he took that opportunity. Bach gaya type of feeling, I'm saved. Now, if you have this feeling in an organization that I'm saved, I'm bach gaya type, then that is a sign of low commitment. So, because if you want to save yourself, bach gaya type of feeling, then there is a big problem again. So if you want to save yourself from the organization, the best way to save yourself from the organization is to simply, well, leave the organization, resign. You will be permanently saved. But on the one hand, you want to be a part of the organization and you want to save yourself. Is that not a conflict? You want to be and you don't want to be. You want to work and you don't want to work. There is a big contradiction. Contradictions always create problems in our life. So such people who are low in commitment, they often have many contradictions. Two things pull them apart. Commitment always allows us to focus on one thing that we are doing, one value system that we stand for. So this is the meaning of that thing which we talked about, that they actively seek out for an opportunity to fulfill the larger mission of the organization, because only by actively making sacrifice, well, that sacrifice becomes the meaning of our life. Remember, commitment, at the root of commitment is just about having a meaning of your life. Having a meaning of your life. And commitment is something that creates that willingness to come forward and do something for the sake of organization is what creates a meaning and purpose for our life. So this is how we define it. Is there any question? Sir, when our personal values and organizational values does not match, then which should we prioritize? Well, that will create a conflict in you. But normally we suggest here, as long as you are working in the organization, you must prioritize your organizational values. Though we will talk about that in civil service class later on, but that is a short and simple answer. That try to not make a conflict. Try to change your personal values in accordance with your organizational value. We can change our value system. That is important. But if there is a conflict, then try to prioritize your organizational values. Otherwise, you will create much bigger conflict in your life. That conflict is a big problem. Next question. Sir, should we jot down at the same time? Yes, you can try. So, as I told you in the first class also, that whatever I write on the board and I speak, if you find is relevant, jot it down. That will help you to, well, relate with later on when you revise your things. So, try to jot it down whatever particularly quotes and all, because I repeat, whenever I speak a quote, I repeat the quote 2-3 times at least, to make it comfortable, easy for you people to jot it down, if some of you who want to. That will be a better thing to do. So that is the definition of commitment. Now, the next important thing that we will talk about is, change the paragraph and then after write, how to increase commitment in an organization. How to increase commitment in an organization. Now, as I told you in the introduction to this topic is very important from your examination point, case study point of view, because every year they might possibly ask a question where commitment can be an answer. So, in this case, you must know that how to increase commitment in the organization. Normally, we say that commitment is not exactly a function of the person. Person is not very important. Our values are something that keep on changing. What was your value in the college may not remain your value today. And once you become a civil servant and a committed one, then your values may change there also. Once I decided to become a teacher, for example, then after my values changed significantly. So our values keep on changing. So that is the fact about the human, about the you can say personal values. So at different stage of life, we value different things in a way. The values keep on changing. So personal values are, person is not very important. Commitment is often, we say, commitment is often a function of the organization. It is the organization that often creates a commitment mostly, because it is normally seen that there are many organizations which has highly committed workforce, and there are some organization which has no commitment at all in their workforce. I will tell you both of these examples. In my neighborhood, there is a person, my old friend. I know this person for more than maybe 25-30 years or so, more than 25 years maybe. Now, I remember when because he is working in, he was till very recently, he was working in a, you can say, he is rather working in an American chain of a restaurant. And he joined this American chain of a restaurant, well, almost 25 years ago, when the first outlet of this restaurant was opened in India, in South Delhi, wasn't Bihar. And he joined this organization virtually at the bottom, helper to the chef in the kitchen. And 20 years later, he was virtually at the top. He was the vice president of this whole organization, and he used to manage in charge of more than 250 organizations, outlets in the whole of North India. So within 20 years, he has risen from that helper to a chef in the kitchen to the vice president of the whole of North India. That is the type of rise. And during this period, he has been offered many, you can say offer. He has got many offers from rival organizations like Radisson Hotel and others, where they are willing to offer. Of course, he is a very good worker, very efficient worker. So many rival organizations have tried to elude him, tried to, you can say, entice him, and they had offered him salary as much as twice of the salary that he is getting here. Now, then also this person has never left this organization, saying that how can I leave this organization? This organization is my child. Ye to mera bachcha hai. This is the term that we often uses. He says that I have made this organization from one outlet to 250 outlets. How can I leave this? This is my child. That is the type of commitment, double of the salary, but still he is not willing to change the job, leave the organization. That is the level of commitment that he has there. On the other hand, there are some people, I know them also, that you pay them 1000 rupees extra and they change their job. They say that whoever will pay me, I will work for that. They have no feeling, no commitment towards the organization. Payment is the only thing for which they possibly work in that case. So why is it that some organization has such a high level of commitment? How is it that some organization has no commitment? Something there is something into the organizational work culture. That is something that we have to look on, and by changing that culture, we can possibly change the commitment somehow. So let us see what are the things that can be done in order to do that. But before that, let's take a question, I think. Sir, there are many people who have high commitment, but with time their commitment decreases. Why there is ups and downs in commitment? Well, we will see that shortly. So, how to increase? So, next question is that, write down, how to increase commitment in an organization. Following things can be done in order to increase the commitment. First one, write down. The organization should write down its core vision and mission. The organization should write down its core vision and mission, goals and values, vision and mission, goals and values in an appealing manner, in the form of a vision statement. In the form of a vision statement. This statement, write down one more line. This statement should be properly articulated among its members. This statement should be properly articulated among its members. Now, this is the first important thing that the organization should do. The idea here is that as we have seen in the definition part itself earlier, that you can see the commitment essentially means your ability to align your personal goals and values with the organizational ones. So, it is because organizational values are important. So, it is very important that organization must be very clear about its values so that we can, as a member, align our values. Organization cannot, our values may keep on changing, our values may be vague also, we may be unaware of our value system, but organization cannot afford to be like that. So, organization must be clear about what is the vision for which it is working, what is the mission that it wants to achieve, what are the goals that it has, what are the values that it stands for. And it must write it down in the form of very appealing manner, well written vision statement which should be properly articulate. Everybody should know that what is that vision statement that my organization is working for. Because if you look at it, the commitment is a type of, we often say that commitment is a type of emotional attachment. The commitment is a type of emotional attachment which people have with their organization. Remember, commitment is always emotional. It is never rational. That is, in this sense, it is never rational. It is always emotional. Ask any person who is high in commitment to talk about their relationship with the organization. They will often use the emotional word. Take the example of my friend that I talked about. When he says that this organization is like my child, do you think it is a rational statement? Rationally, it is a very stupid statement. Nonsense. But emotionally, it is a highly meaningful sentence. He compares his relationship with his organization with that of his child. It is emotional comparison, it is not a rational comparison. So, committed people often use emotional word to describe their relationship with their organization or whatever relationship that they feel commitment for. So, it is always an emotional attachment, and in that emotional attachment, this vision statement acts like an anchor. Acts like an anchor. Now, what is an anchor? Anchor, you know that in shipyard we have anchors where the ships come from the sea, anchors hold them, attach them to the shipyard. So, anchors are those things which allow the other things to be held together, attached with you. Who is the anchor? You can say in a TV discussion that happens. One of my students told me that he is the person who shouts the most. Perhaps he might be watching Arnav Goswami more than anybody else. So, that may be, but so anchors are basically those central points which hold everything together, all the other panelists, for example. So, in that you can say, so in that emotional attachment, this vision statement works like an anchor. It works like a central point to which people can attach. And we feel attachment, remember, emotional attachment, not with the table and chair and the computers on which we work. We feel emotional attachment with the vision that we work for, because we are ethical animal. Visions normally create much more emotional appeal to us than the material infrastructure in a way. So, that is what you can say commitment essentially means here. But there is a caveat here. Write down further. But this vision statement should not be, but this vision statement should not just be a, but this vision statement should not just be a political statement or a marketing ploy. Should not just be a political statement or marketing ploy. Ploy, P-L-O-Y, ploy. It must actually reflect the true values of the organization. It must actually reflect the true values of the organization. So this is the next important thing here, because the problem is that many organizations theoretically know that vision statement is important, and what they do, that they go to Google out and find 20 great vision statement in the world, copy paste and make a grand vision statement for themselves. That will not work, because if you make a vision statement by copy paste, then you will get commitment also by copy paste. So it's important that, so that will be a that will be very shallow commitment, that will not be a deep commitment. So the organization must make vision statement in such a manner that this vision statement must reflect the actual true value of the organization. It must come from the ground. It must come from the bottom. It should not only be imposed from the top by, well, copy paste type of thing. If that does, then vision statement plays a very important role in the commitment of the person. So this is one important thing that organization can do. Let me see, there is a question. Nimai, sir, preamble of the Constitution act in the same as when preamble of the Constitution is actually a vision statement, Nimai. So that is what every can say. India also is a organization in that case, as an entity. I talked about patriotism is what? That it is our commitment towards the nation. So that vision statement is the preamble. And that's why we often say that preamble must be learnt by everybody. That should guide that will create a feeling of attachment to the constitutional values that our country stands for. Yes, preamble is actually not similar to, it is actually a vision statement of our constitution. So that is the first important thing that the organization should do. Second thing, write down further. The organization should fulfill a sufficient material needs. Organization should fulfill a sufficient material needs of its members. Sufficient material needs of its members. So that is the next important idea here, is that salary must be good. Salary must be good, because we all have our material needs. We have to pay our bills, EMIs, etc. Educational, say, expenditure of the child. So we all have our expenditures, social obligation, etc. So organization must fulfill the need of the people. If the needs are not fulfilled, then, well, people will start, if the salary is too low, not sufficient to fulfill the needs of the person, then the person will like to have some other source of income. And the moment the person will try to have other source of income, the first casualty will be the commitment. Because in that case, the commitment will become divided. And divided commitment is a problem, big problem here. Commitment must be focused, one line commitment. So that is the problem. So salary must be sufficient, salary must be good. You know, it is on this region, do you know, for example, before the 6th pay commission, 15 years ago maybe, what was the basic salary of an IAS officer? Well, as far as I remember, it was 8,400 rupees. With all the TA and DA, it used to be 25,000, but that was too less in comparison to a similar job done by the people in the private sector. So many people say that if salary is so low in bureaucracy, how can you expect commitment from them? It was on this ground that, that there was a sudden increase in 6th pay commission. There was many-fold increment in the salary of the civil servant, which has further been increased in the 7th pay commission a few years ago, implemented by the Modi government. So you people have better incentive to work harder. You will get better salary than many of your seniors in their time. So the salary has become significantly increased. But remember, salary is only one important criteria of commitment, not the sufficient. We often say that salary is the minimum condition of commitment, not the sufficient one. A few years ago, when the 7th pay commission was implemented in India, accepted in India, then one of my Facebook friend, Mohan Guruswamy, a well-known economist and China expert, who often writes articles in the newspaper and comes even on the TV channels and all. Now, he wrote a status on Facebook first of all, then after he wrote an article also in the Asian Age on the same topic. He wrote in his Facebook page that they say, the management people, they say that if you, this is a famous saying in the management circle, cliche, that if you pay peanuts, you will get monkeys. So if you pay peanuts, only monkeys will come to you. So if you want to attract a talent from the society, then first principle is that pay them well. Pay them well. Only then talented people come to you. Otherwise, well, you will get only monkeys. So this is the first principle of management, that pay them well. Only then you will get talent from the society. So my friend wrote that they say, management people, that if you pay peanuts, then you will get monkeys. But the problem with the Indian bureaucracy is that Indian bureaucrats are already monkeys. So if you increase their salary, then they will become fat monkeys. They will not become human beings. Well, that was insulting, but well, idea here is that salary is a very important part of high commitment, but it is not a sufficient one. Along with that, many other factors must be fulfilled, like having a proper vision statement. Others, let us talk about them. Third one, the organization should provide enough growth opportunity. The organization should provide enough growth opportunity to its members. The organization should provide enough growth opportunity to its members. That is the second important thing. The idea is that we all have a very strong motivation to grow. Growth is a very important motivation that we all want to be. So organization must fulfill that motivation of the people also to grow. Just imagine a situation, there is a person in your organization who is doing a job today, and 20 years down the line, if he is doing the same job, then do you think that he will be motivated enough in that case? Of course not. He will do his job, he has become expert. So he will keep a job in a expert manner, but no motivation. He will work more like a machine, more like a robot, not like a human being with intrinsic. What is the difference between robot working and we working? Robot works only because they are keyed in, they are given electric current or program. We work because there is something inside us that motivates us to work. If that something inside us is missing, motivation will not be there, commitment will not be there. So 20 years doing the same job will make the person extremely expert in his work, mechanical, well, robotic, but it will not increase the commitment, or you can say motivation for him. That is why we often say that organization must provide enough growth opportunity, because when initially that person joined at this level, it was a challenging job for him. But 5 years, 10 years, this has become very easy. Once it has become very easy for him, he has to be promoted to higher level so that he can get challenged once again. Further higher, so challenge is a very important part of a motivated work life, as we had seen earlier. So this is the thing that we have to do. Growth opportunity is very important. Think of my friends whose example I gave you earlier, that he joined virtually at the bottom of the organization 20 years ago, and 20 years later, he was virtually at the top. That type of rise he had seen in that organization. Now, that will motivate not only him, but everybody else in the organization, where people will think that if this person can rise that much, then I can also rise if I work hard in this organization. There must be a promotion avenue, there must be a growth opportunity. People must see themselves somewhere else 5 years, 10 years down the line. That is the third important thing that can be done. Then fourth important thing, write down, there should be a proper system of communication and grievance redressal. There should be a proper system of communication and grievance redressal in the organization. There should be a proper system of communication and grievance redressal in the organization. So that is another very important part of commitment. The idea here is that communication is another very important need that we all have. We all want to communicate, well, express ourselves. Freedom of expression is a very important part of a human life. We have seen a number of times in our earlier class also. So people have a need to communicate. So if somebody wants to say something in the organization, communicate something, then his voice should not be muzzled. His voice should not be, well, killed in a way. Everybody should get an opportunity to communicate, talk, or express themselves. And very often that communication takes the form of grievance or complaint. So if there is a complaint that somebody has, grievance somebody has, it must be properly handled. It should not, nobody's complaint should be ignored or snubbed. So that communication and complaint is a very important part. Communication system and complaint handling, grievance redressal is a very important part of an committed work culture. About some time ago, I was reading an article on the importance of communication in an organization. In this article, the author has talked about some interesting example. I remember a few of them. Think of it. One example was about Bill Gates. When Bill Gates was the CEO of the Microsoft, then he had a dedicated email ID that was accessible only to the Microsoft employees. And anybody from Microsoft could mail to him on that email ID, and he used to personally respond to that. One example. Second example that person has given, the author had given, was Steve Jobs. When Steve Jobs was the CEO of Apple, then he also had a special dedicated phone number that was available only to the Apple employees, only to the Apple. So anybody from Apple could call him on that number anytime, and he used to personally respond to that number always. Now, when you are a Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, people will not call you every day, of course. So, but this feeling that the people have, that if I have something to say, then my boss will listen to me, well, it creates lots of confidence and attachment. So that confidence must be there in the way that if I want to say something, my boss will listen, my organization will listen to that. So that is a very important part of a committed workforce, committed organization. So that is another important thing. Next question. There is a question. Let me see that. Pinto, sir, in any family, a person attached very crystally, but due to some reason they separated from family. In this case, can we say that the family acts as an organization and family, or both, they fail to provide that trust in the relationship? Sir, even this is major issue in India, and it leads to form of family, single family. So give some measurement how to handle these types of issues in our surrounding in contemporary time. Yes, Pinto, it is a problem of commitment, because I'm talking about here basically about the organization, but all these points are relevant for every group. That's why I use the term organization or group. It can be group also, like a family, like a friend circle, like any other thing. So commitment is always about that, how much you are actually doing that. So family must have certain goal. Okay, this is what we want to do something together. Family must also have a system of communication. Proper. Family is an informal setting, so that's why it cannot be as clear as we are talking about. But in the family also, there should be some shared vision that all of them must have. So only that will keep them together and attached. If that shared vision is not there, then slowly family also will break apart. That's why I can say the joint. So young people, after getting education, they do not share the joint family values. They become more individualistic. So, and because of that individualism again, well, they do not get that fulfillment or meaning of life in a joint family. So they try to start a nuclear family in that case, where they find more better meaning of life or purpose of life. So we can apply all these ideas. Let's not go into detail, because that will become too complicated detail here. But idea is that we can apply the same idea in family also, or in any other group, friend circle, family, etc., classroom, wherever you can think, you can apply the similar ideas with some modification according to the requirement. So this is the third thing that can be done. Then after fourth one, I don't further. Fifth one, write down the distribution of resource. The distribution of resource should be just. The distribution of resource should be just, and it should also appear to be just. The distribution of resource should be just, and it should also appear to be just. So that is the next important. Every organization has to distribute resource. Who gets what in an organization? Whose salary will be what? Who will get a laptop? Who will get a can say anything that matter. So that distribution of resource must be just. So for example, if my colleague is getting something that I do not get, for example, like a car, then it's not that he is closer to boss. He gets a car which I do not get from my office, because perhaps his job requires a car, my job does not. So there should be a system in that case, who in the organization gets what. There should not be any personal partiality in the distribution of resource. That also increases the commitment of people in the organization. So that is one thing. And last, one more thing you can write. The people who are affected by a decision, the people who are affected by a decision should be made a part of the decision making process. People who are affected by a decision should be made a part of the decision making process at any stage of the process. Should be made a part of the decision making process at any stage of the process. So that is another important thing. The idea here is that I hope that you remember we have talked about exactly this point in some other competence earlier also. I hope you remember we had talked about this point in the self-control class, sense of control. So there we had talked about that if you make people a part of the decision making process, then it increases their self-control. So today we will say the same thing also increases people's commitment. So in order to increase commitment, you must ensure that people become part of the every decision that they are affected by, because that will give a feeling to the people that if my organization does something which affects me, then I will be consulted. I am a part of that process. This feeling that I belong is an important part of the commitment of the organization. So participation is a very important, participation in the decision making is a very important part of the committed workforce in a way. So these are some of the important things that there are a large number of other things also that can be done, but I will limit my discussion from this till this point here. So this is what we can say can be done. But remember one very important thing, commitment is not something that is a mechanical thing that you can switch it on and off. No, commitment does not happen that like that. Secondly, also that commitment is not something that happens in a day. It takes long time. So whenever you join an organization, think of it, whenever you join an organization, then initially your commitment would be very low. Suppose for example, initially you join an organization, your commitment might be something like this. Why it is low? Because initially when you join the organization, you know nothing about the organization. How can you align your value? You don't know the value of the organization. So that takes time to understand the value system. So rational commitment takes in a minute. We sign on the document and you make a commitment, but emotional commitment does not happen in a day. So initially it will be like this one, but if these conditions are fulfilled, then that we talked about in the previous topic, then this commitment may lead to comparatively higher commitment like this one, and this may finally lead to, after many months, a very high commitment depending on how much of these factors are met and to an extent on the individual also. So commitment does not happen in a day, it takes time. Commitment can change from low to medium to high. Sometimes even reverse can happen. Somebody had asked this question also. I think Nimai, let me see. There was a question. Nimai, you had asked this question, sir. There are many people who have high commitments, but with time their commitment decreases. Why there is ups and downs in commitment? This is because of that. Emotional, you can say, commitment does not happen in a day, it does not change in a day also, but it can change on the basis of situation. So when the situation is conducive, person feels that his values are being fulfilled in the organization, slowly change can happen in that way. But after some point of time, person thinks, okay, my value system, I am not getting enough meaning and purpose in my life in this organization, then it might get reversed also. Commitment keeps on changing also, depending on many factors, like you can say the organizational culture, it's change in that, the personal life conditions, social conditions, all these things have some bearing on the commitment. That's why I told you commitment is not something that you can mechanically switch it on. No, commitment is a more complicated thing. Only thing that we can do is that we can increase the chances of commitment. If you do these things that we talked about in the previous topic, you can have a more committed workforce in that sense. So that is how commitment can be increased. So that is all about commitment that we have planned to study with you. Now, third competence based on motivation is called initiative. Third competence is called initiative. Write down a few lines firstly. It is our ability to show proactivity and to mobilize people to seize the opportunity. Seize, SEIZE, and to seize the opportunities. Now, this is how we can define initiative as an emotional competence. So, this is also, as we will see shortly, is a very important competence, particularly missing in bureaucracy, in bureaucrats, and a very important competence for a bureaucrat to be successful, as we will see why it is missing and how important it can be. Both of that we will talk about here. So, let us first of all talk about what exactly initiative is. Of course, as I told you the definition, initiative is essentially our ability to show proactivity. So, proactivity is at the root of initiative as an emotional competence. What is the meaning of the term proactivity? Well, proactivity means something like this one. Think of it. Suppose, for example, this is time. Suppose this is time and this is the present moment now. This is the present moment now. And at this moment, suppose you visualize, you see that sometimes in the future, maybe tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, next decade, whenever, sometimes in the future, there is going to be some opportunity for you or some threat. We'll see the difference between the two shortly. Suppose there is an opportunity or threat coming up sometimes in the future. Now, looking at that opportunity, if you start working right now, so that by the time the opportunity comes to you, you are ready for that. You are prepared for that, so that the moment opportunity comes, you are so ready, you simply grab the opportunity and take the advantage of that. Because remember, in order to take advantage of any opportunity, it's very important that we are ready for that. If you are not ready, prepared, then the same opportunity can become threat. From our point of view, we differentiate opportunity and threat just by preparedness. So, any situation can become an opportunity for you if you are prepared for that, and same thing can become a threat for you if you are not prepared for that. Preparedness makes a difference between the opportunity and threat. So, that is the meaning of the term proactivity, that you start acting much in advance, so that when the time actually comes up, then you are ready to grab the opportunity, ready to take the advantage of that. On the other hand, there are some people, you know many of them, there are some people, they know that there is an opportunity, but they keep on postponing their work. Oh, there is enough time, it is there last week, next month. So, there is enough time, they keep on postponing their actions. And because of that, when the actual opportunity starts knocking at their door, then suddenly they start feeling the pressure that, well, such a great opportunity is there, but I am not ready. Then after, they start working in a sort of what we can call crisis mode. They start working in a crisis mode. They are the people, they work mostly when they are forced by the situation. They work only when they are forced by the situation. That would be a lack of initiative. So, just think of it. Suppose let's take an example of a student like you. Suppose, for example, you are preparing for the mains exam next year. So, now there is more than 1 year is there. Now, there are some students, when they start preparing, then they decide to prepare for the UPSC exam. From that time, they start working very hard, so that when the examination comes, they are ready for that. There are some students, on the other hand, they keep on postponing. Oh, there is enough time, more than a year is there, I will study tomorrow, let me enjoy today. So, they keep on. How many of you do that? That there is enough time, I will study tomorrow, let me enjoy today. So, we keep on postponing, okay, I will study tomorrow, next week onwards. Today, this week is a week of enjoyment. So, we keep on postponing our actions, and because of that, when the examination actually comes up, then we are not ready for that. And the moment we are not ready for that, then we start feeling crisis. We start running here and there, collecting notes from all of my friends, going to the teachers, sir, tell me some guess question, what is going to come up in tomorrow's exam. So if you do like this, then that is a lack of initiative. So there are some people, they act much in advance so that they are ready, and there are some people who act only when they are forced by the situation. If you use the Kantian term, they are the people, they show reactivity. They react to the situation rather than proact. Proact means act in a prior manner. There is no force, there is no compulsion for you to act, but even then you act. Pro. That is the meaning from initiate your action rather than waiting for the situation to force your action. If you use the Kantian terminology, then Kant will say that this might be an example of an autonomous act and this might be an example of a heteronomous act. In this case, you do because you decide to do it yours. There is no compulsion, there is no force. In this case, you do only when situation is forcing you. Situation is a determining factor and your action is a response to that determining factor. That is a heteronomous act. So Kant will say that this is an autonomous act, moral act, and that will be heteronomous act, amoral act. But forget about morality. It will make you successful, that will make a person fail maybe. Initiative means that initiate your action, don't wait for the situation to force you. That is the meaning of the term proactivity. Now let us see some of the behavioral characteristics of the people who are high in initiative. So write down further. The people who are high in this competence, ready for them and are ready for them when they occur. And are ready for them when they occur. So this is the one thing again. Your ability to anticipate an incoming opportunity is the beginning of initiative. What does that mean? It means it is something that, so it is like this, we can understand that. Suppose for example, again, this is time. And suppose in an organization, this is the hierarchy of the organization, increasing hierarchy. So people who are lower, middle and the top. It is normally seen in any organizational hierarchy that people who are at the bottom of the organization, they can anticipate things that may happen a month later maybe. People who are in the middle of the organization, they can anticipate things that happen maybe 6 months later. And people who are at the top of the organization, the senior management or CEO of the company, they can anticipate, or they should be able to anticipate things that may happen maybe years later, maybe decades later also. And this is how they should start their planning. So this time that we are able to anticipate, time frame in the future, we often call that as window of anticipation. We call that as window of anticipation. So we can see that as people rise up, then their window of anticipation becomes bigger and bigger. You can see the physical parallel also. If you are on the first floor of your house, for example, then you can see far. If you are on the 10th floor of your house, you can see much farther. And if you are on the 100th floor of your building, then you can see much farther. You can see much farther. कोई प्रॉब्लम है क्या? वीडियो जंप करके आ रहा है. हाँ, क्या नेटवर्क नहीं है क्या? रुक जाए क्या? हो रहा है रिकॉर्डिंग. ठीक है. Don't worry, video will be shared with you. So idea is that if you want me to repeat, I can tell it again, that they can anticipate the impending opportunity or threat and they are ready for them when they actually occur. So this is what we have written there, but what we were talking about is the window of anticipation. So idea is that the time frame in the future which we can anticipate is called the window of anticipation. That is what we call the window of anticipation. So as we have seen that people who are at the lower level of the organization, they can anticipate things that can happen 1 month later. People in the middle of the organization, they can anticipate the things that can happen 6 months later. People at the top can anticipate the things that can happen maybe, well, months, years later, or even decades later. So that is what is found in that case. So the idea is that, and this is physically also same thing. If you are on the first floor of your house, you can see far. You can see far. If you are on the 10th floor of your house, you can see much farther. And you are on the 100th floor of your house building, you can see much more farther. So as we rise up in the hierarchy of the organization, farther we can see in the future. Because of that, we often say that the initiative becomes even more important for those people who are at the top of the organization. People who are at the lower of the organization, perhaps they may not show that much initiative. They do not have that opportunity. They can't see the future that far. But people at the top, they are able to, and they should be able to see far in the future. Otherwise, they will fail, and their failure may have serious consequence for the organization. Take some examples that we had already taken earlier. Take the case of Nokia. Now, Nokia, at one point of time, we have talked about that, was market leader in India in the mobile. But within a few years, they had to close down from India. What happened? They were not perhaps able to anticipate that future of mobile in India is not in that small and sturdy mobile they used to make, that you can throw and it will not break. Future of mobile is, well, in the smartphone and the Android, and they were not able to make their transition from, well, basic phone to the Android, and that ultimately led them to, so that was a lack of initiative. Another example was the we have discussed that also earlier, Kodak. That senior management of the Kodak they could not see that future of, you can say, photography is not in the chemical chemical photography that they were expert in. Future of photography is in digital photography, and they were not able to make that transition from chemical to the digital photography. And that, because of that, one of the largest 50 companies in the world, well, Kodak had to file for bankruptcy within 10 years. So in all these cases, many such cases you can find in the business world, that powerful and big organization fails. So in many such organizations you can find in the business world, where people at the top, they were not able to foresee the future, and because of that, well, organization had to pay heavy price for that. So initiative means that you must see the future appropriately and be ready for that accordingly. And this is something that is often found to be very much missing in the bureaucracy. Just take one example. This is the time, when in Delhi, almost you must have heard about that, well, flood situation was extremely bad till a few days ago. And, well, there was a huge water logging every year that happens in big cities like Delhi, Bangalore, etc. When during monsoon, there is a huge water logging happen. Now, when water logging happens, people started complaining about that, media starts making noise about that. Then after, the administration runs to action, and then they start cleaning the sludge, or you can say the drain, etc. By this time, too much of inconvenience is already created. Now they know that, well, monsoon is coming up, and they know that during monsoon there will be water logging. So they should have acted much in advance, so that when the monsoon comes, that drain must be clean, or there must be a proper arrangement for, you can say, the situation might have been much better handled. But problem happens when the problem starts actually occurring to them. Then, well, everybody start making noise about that, media and the government and the opposition, etc. Then they spring into action. We will say here that is lack of initiative. If you know that future is, some problem is going to come up, why are you not ready for that? Many people might say that many more deaths happened during the second wave of COVID because of this also. That government did not anticipate what is coming up in the future. They started thinking, being complacent, that we have defeated the COVID, we have won. but they did not know that a bigger wave was coming up, and they did not get ready for that. And by the time they got ready, a large number of people had started. So when the people started dying, there was a stampede at the hospitals or at the cremation ground, etc. People were, the dead body of the people were thrown on the, you can say, rivers and all. Then after the government ran into action, they speeded the vaccination process and tried to, you can say, make the medical infrastructure better. Now, by this time, a number of people had already died. Now, initiative means that you have to visualize that something bigger is going to come up. Well, start vaccination much faster in advance rather than exporting all the much vaccine. So many people say that, well, many deaths happened during that period, COVID second wave particularly. It might be not because of the COVID, it was because of a lack of initiative on the part of the government. So don't use this example in your exam. Don't write something strongly against the government. But this is just for the understanding. You can use the monsoon example, that when the government, you can say spring in action, a lot of problem already happens there. So that is a problem of initiative maybe. Let me see, there are many questions. Dictate, there is a book by, Pinto, there is a book by Stephen Covey. He said very clearly about the difference between proactive and reactive person. So tell us something on it also. I told you, Pinto, about that. More than that, it is not required from our course. Proactive means that starting much before you are forced by the situation. Reactive means when situation is there, you have no other way, then you react to that. More than that, we don't require. Well, that's so all the questions, all the, you can say, message are just about the video glitches. I hope that it will be corrected and it will be shared to you. I was told to continue. So I hope that glitch was there on the internet, that will be buffered. Here recording is there, you will get it. So that's your first important sign of initiative. Second important sign of initiative is, write down, second thing, they pursue the goals, they pursue the goals which are beyond, they pursue the goals which are beyond what is expected or required of, they pursue the goals which are beyond what is expected or required of them. They pursue the goals which are beyond what is expected or required of them. They do not hide behind, such excuses, they do not hide behind such excuses like, in double quote you can write, it's not my job. They do not hide behind such excuses like, it's not my job. It's not my job. Now, that is the second, a very important aspect of initiative, which, as we will see shortly, is very much missing in bureaucracy. The idea here is that we all, whenever we play a social role in our life, then we all are expected or required to behave in a certain manner. So in this classroom, for example, I am playing the role of a teacher, and as a teacher I am expected to behave in a certain manner. That's my duty. That's my job. So, or you can see the when you become a civil servant tomorrow, then you will be assigned certain duty. You will be given certain duty, you will be assigned certain job. So that is what you will be expected. We all are given certain jobs, certain duties to perform. Now, problem is that sometimes it may be required that you have to go slightly beyond what is our duty and do something more than that. But many people are there, they start thinking, oh, it's my job, I will do only this. I will not go beyond that. because it's not my job. So it's my job and it's not my job. That is a major problem that many people suffer from. And as you can appreciate from this whole thing, that it is very much found in the bureaucracy normally. Suppose for example, you are a civil servant. Suppose you are a civil servant. So you go to any government job as a private person. Suppose you go to a government office and there you find that you want to get some work done. Now you ask a person that this is work that I want to get done, tell me who can do that job. Now that person, if he is a good person, he will tell you that your work will be done by the person sitting on the counter number 9, but he is not in the office today, so well, come tomorrow. So he will simply refuse to do anything and all. Now in this situation, case can be that this person may possibly tell you that my colleague will do your job, but he is not in the office today, but let me see what I can do. It's not my job, but if I take one step ahead and try to help you out in that situation, you have to come here to take service. And it's our job as a government officer to give you the service that you require, that you want, that you deserve. So if I do not do that, then I'm showing a lack of initiative. It's very commonly found in the bureaucracy that, well, it's not my job. Why should I do that? We often blindly limit ourselves to what is my job and what is not. You know, this attitude that it's not my job is so common that some times ago, somebody had posted, a series of photographs on my Facebook page. I hope that some of you may have seen these photographs also. Very common, very popular, you can say viral photograph it was. Now, one photograph I remember in which what happened, that suppose for example, there was a road and somebody had painted the road line, the line separation, some painter had done the lane separation painting on the road. I suppose he had painted the road like this one. At this point, there was a branch of tree had fallen. And this person, well, painted it like this. Now, you must have seen that photograph. It is very commonly. Now, just think of it. What might have been going on in the mind of the person who painted the road like this one? Well, he might have been thinking, might have thought that I am a painter. I am not a sweeper. Removing the job, you can say branch of the tree from the road is the job of a sweeper. I am not a sweeper. Why should I do his job? So, I am a painter. I will only paint. Even if I have to paint like this one, I will not remove that. Now, this is the attitude that initiative tries to go against. Because granted that you are not a sweeper, you are a painter, you are not a sweeper, but even then, if you remove the branch and paint the road appropriately, then it will not cost you much. Take one step ahead and do it, because even if it is not your job, do it. There was another picture was there, somebody had shown me in that case, that somebody had painted a picture and at this point a mouse has, a dead body of a mouse was kept on the road and he painted above his dead body rather than removing the mouse and painting the road. So all of these are the examples of low initiative. That is not my job, why should I do that? So that is where the problem. Initiative means that if you can do it, then it is your job. You must do it. There is an old famous dictum in philosophy. It was said by Immanuel Kant. Kant said that in some other context, but I will use that in my context here. Kant had said that can implies out. He said that in terms of freedom and morality. I hope that you remember freedom and morality that we discussed in the Kantian theory. So can means freedom, I can do it, I am free to do that, and out means morality, I ought to do that. So can implies out. This is what he said in some other context. Let's not go into that Kantian context. Here we can see here, if you can do something, then you ought to do that. You should do that. You cannot, there is something that you cannot sign on behalf of your colleague, that will be illegal. You should not do that. But if you can do something, well, without violating a law, then, well, you should do that. If you can do a job, then that is your job. So don't hide behind such excuses that it is not my job. That is what initiative requires. I will give you some example, a practical example of that shortly. But before that, write down the third point. Another very, very important aspect of initiative, which we will see again very much missing in the bureaucracy. Third one. Write down. They cut through the red tape. They cut through the red tape and sometimes even bend the rules if in order to get it. Now, if sometimes even bend the rules in order to get the job done. They cut through the red tape and sometimes even bend the rules in order to get the job done. So that is the next important aspect of initiative here. The idea here is that cutting through the red tape is a very important part of initiative, which is very much, as we will see, missing in the bureaucracy. What is the meaning of red tape, by the way? I hope all of you must have heard the word red tape. When I ask in my class, many students give me many answers. Sir, it's procedures, too much dependence on procedures, rule, paperwork, file work, etc., etc. Well, the way we like to understand red tape is something like this. Suppose, for example, you are working in an organization. Suppose there is a rule that you have. Now, if you have a rule, then this rule have a purpose. Every rule has a purpose, you know. That's why rules are made. Rules are utilitarian, remember. We have discussed rule in utilitarian theory, John Stuart Mill. So rules are utilitarian, it has a consequence, it has a purpose for which they are made. So if there is a rule, it has a certain purpose, and most often when you follow the rules, you will achieve the purpose. That's why these rules exist. So most often you should follow the rule because that will help you to achieve the purpose for which these rules exist, they are made. But sometimes in some special circumstances, there is a conflict between the rule and the purpose, that if you follow the rule, then purpose will be defeated, and if you try to achieve the purpose, then you may have to bend the rule. You cannot do both of them together. Now, in such a situation, what do you think? What does common sense tell us? Which of the two is more important, rule or purpose? Well, any commonsensical person will say that purpose is more important. Purpose is of course more important, that's why the rules exist. But red tape is a situation in which we keep on following the rule even if the purpose is defeated. It is something like this, that we surround, suppose for example there is a person like A, me, you or anybody, we surround ourselves with a red tape of rules and regulations. Red tape, red means what? Red is a sign of, well, red is a sign of danger. Red is a sign of, well, danger. You can say threat, don't cross the line. It is a red line. Red line means line that should not be crossed. So we surround ourselves with the red tape of rules and regulation, and we start thinking that rules allow me to go that far, not farther than that. So I will never cross this line. But sometimes ethics may require us to cross the line and do something beyond that. That we become so blind to the rules again that you can say following the rule in a way that we start considering, okay, we cannot cross it, we become constricted to that. We again, and rules are a type of boundary around us, a type of Lakshman Rekha around us. I hope you remember we had talked about the story of Lakshman Rekha in some other class earlier also. So these rules and regulations become a type of Lakshman Rekha drawn around us, and we refuse to cross that. But sometimes ethics requires us to cross the Lakshman Rekha also. So sometimes Sita did cross the Lakshman Rekha, and you know the importance of that event. Because of that, the whole Ramayana actually happened. So sometimes it is required by us to cross the Lakshman Rekha, to cross the line. But we can say red tape is a situation in which we refuse to cut through the red tape even if purpose is defeated. We keep on following the rule even if the purpose is defeated. That is the problem with the red tape. Now, one sign of initiative is that they are the people, they cut through the red tape and they sometimes even bend the rules in order to get the job done. Now, you can use this idea of cutting through the red tape in many case studies and all. It is particularly relevant for case study in a way. Let's take an example to understand how this can be used in the case study part. Let's take one example, one case study, a small case study I was reading somewhere. Suppose, for example, you are an officer in the pension department of your city, your town, your office. Now, one day an old lady comes to take pension from you on behalf of her husband who died 5 years ago. A very old lady, 80 years old, 85, and she is taking pension, a spouse pension, or you can say on behalf of her husband. Now, this lady is a very old lady, frail lady, weak lady, and uneducated, illiterate lady. She has come from a far away village and only to take the pension. She does not know anybody in the town, and after taking the pension, she has to go back to the village. Today itself, she has nowhere in the town to stay. But the rule is that you before giving her the pension, you have a rule that you must take a medical certificate from her that she is alive. Now, this was a very interesting rule. Many stories are there about this rule. There was an old man, he went to take a pension, and the officer asked him that, show me your certificate. Then old man asked, what certificate do you need? He said, certificate that you are alive. And he said, I am standing in front of you all alive, what more certificate do you need? Then he said, no, I need a medical certificate that you are alive. I don't know whether it's a real story or a joke. Once it happened that there was a person who was in coma, lying in a hospital bed. For the last 5-6 days, he has not risen from, he was in coma, unconscious. Suddenly, he gained consciousness. He got up and he sat, and he saw his medical report lying beside him. Now, he started reading his report. At the end of the report, it was written that the patient is dead. He became very shocked. He called the nurse and started shouting at the nurse, what have you done? I am all alive, and you have written such negligence. So I am all alive and you have written the patient is dead. The nurse scolded him back and told him, please lie down. Doctor knows more than you know. If the doctor says you are dead, you are dead. I don't care what you believe, what you think. I don't trust you. I trust the doctor. So that is extreme form of red tapeism. If file says that you are dead, you are dead. I don't trust you. I trust the file. Too much of excessive dependence on the file is what is an, so it is an extreme form of, you can say, red tapeism. So many such stories you can read about the red tapeism in a way. Now coming back to that question, suppose for example so this lady, before giving her pension, you must take certificate from her that she is alive, medical certificate, but she does not have the certificate. She does not know anybody in the town whom she can, you can say, who can help her. So only choice in front of you is that you can refuse her the pension because she does not follow the rule, and let her go back. Second thing is that you can do something in order to ensure that she gets her pension. In such a situation, what you should have done? Now this is where the cutting through the red tape comes up. So in this case, first thing that you must ensure that she gets her pension. It is her due, and it is your duty to, it is her due, it is her right, and it is your duty to ensure that she gets her due. How? Well, find out a way. So you can, one initiative you can show. So in your answer, in such a case, you must use the term initiative, that I will show initiative. What can be the initiative? One initiative can be that you can help her to arrange a medical certificate. Again, remember, it's not your job. But even then, since you can help her out, it is not illegal to help her, so you ought to do that. Can implies out. So it's not your job, granted, but even then, if you can help her to get a medical certificate and take her pension, then that is what ethics requires. Or suppose for example that is not possible, you don't have that much of time, or we can say free time. Then ask some of your colleague to help her to get a medical certificate. Suppose that is also not possible, then take a self-declaration from her with a thumb impression, give her the pension and tell her that this time I am giving you the pension, next month I will not give you. So next month do bring a certificate from you, put some pressure on that, because rules are important that you must be following. But idea is that do whatever you can do, try to find a way out, but yes, it must be done. Purpose must be achieved. That is the, you can say, the cutting through the red tape. You know, in my initial introduction classes, I had talked about a case, Santoshi Kumari case in Jharkhand, where Santoshi Kumari's mother was refused ration because her ration card was not linked to the Aadhaar card, and because of that refusal of ration, this girl Santoshi Kumari died. Now in this case, if you are the ration authority, what you should have done in that case? Well, this is where again the cutting through the red tape or initiative comes up. In that answer also you should have shown some initiative. Help her to get her ration card linked to the Aadhaar card. That is not your job, but even then you should do it. So it's not my job should not be an excuse that should prohibit us from doing what is right. You must do the right thing. That is the important thing. You must achieve the purpose for which you work. So in any such question, initiative can be a word, competence that you can use, and you can get a better solution for that. This is what is the meaning of the term initiative further. That is the third one. And last point is, write down, they mobilize others also. They mobilize others also through their unusual and enterprising efforts. They mobilize others also through their unusual and enterprising efforts. Through their unusual and enterprising efforts in order to seize the opportunity. in order to seize the opportunity. So this is also an extension of an important part of initiative. So you must show initiative yourself, cut through the red tape and go beyond your pursued role. So expected role. But you must also mobilize other people to seize the opportunity, take the advantage of. So for example, as that pension authority, if you mobilize your colleague to help that old lady to get certificate, and that is also an initiative. So create an initiative, environment of initiative, where you should show initiative whenever it is required, but you must encourage, you must mobilize other people, you must motivate other people also to show the initiative. So that is what. So these are the 4 important things that defines initiative as an important competence, which as we can see from this discussion is very much missing in bureaucracy, but this is one thing that a successful bureaucrat must always have. That is what initiative essentially is. Then after, the last emotional competence based on motivation is called optimism. But optimism, well, I will not be able to discuss today. Let me see if some questions are there. Class of बंद करेंगे अब हम. एक minute. So today there is some issue for which I will not be able to continue the class next. So optimism we will talk about in tomorrow's class, and then after we will talk about empathy, the 4th emotional competence, very important, but both of that we will discuss in tomorrow's class. So today I will leave the class a little earlier. So that's it for today.